The head and shoulders pattern that everybody is talking about right now has Wall Street set a trap for us as retail traders, which they've done 3 times already in 2024. Today, we take a look at the options flow and, of course, the dark pool liquidity to try to figure out what's the next move of the biggest players. On top of this, have we seen the top for Tesla yet? It continues to move towards that 500 call wall target. And in today's video, we'll talk about the positive gamma breach at this stage. And then there was a big transaction, the largest we've ever seen on Ethereum leveraged contracts. Yes, it just came through. Let's go through it right now together. Stocks, commodities, and cryptos, guys. A lot going on just before the potential Santa rally. We'll break it down right now. Well, welcome back everybody to The Daily Show. My name's Tom, and in today's video, we have a lot to discuss. Tesla's big squeeze, what's going on with semiconductors, and of course, breadth in the market. So let's begin the storyline here with discussing this breadth statistic. Something we have not seen many times ever in history has happened again. 11 days now with negative breadth. That is, more stocks are actually going down than up, yet the markets are still hovering in what we call a pit or a pullback in time. We do expect this at this point of year, obviously leading into the OPEX, the big options expiration, but will the Santa rally take us out of it? We'll talk about that in a moment. But let's have a look at the stats here. First up, not too many reads, so you've got to think of this as kind of like a, not a really great data point, but you do want to be looking at the 12 months later. In all but one, we were pretty bullish and very bullish indeed. But what I always find here is that we end up seeing most of these at pullbacks. Now, interestingly, where are we right now? Basically an all-time high. So probably the first time we've ever seen it kind of like this. It reminds me a little bit of the period like over here, or maybe even a period here where we've had a bullish move. We've sat for a little while, and then we continue on the way up. So hopefully this does mean that markets can continue up. And that, of course, leads into, are we in a bubble? Is this the worst bubble we've ever seen? Here's a chart from 2019 to present. I personally would take this over a longer period of time. I think really you should be looking at this chart probably from 2013 breakouts to present. But what you'll notice here is that yes, we do have a very good gain on the NASDAQ, and we are still not close to the overall 1990s period. That being said, I think it's all about concentrated markets. And remember, as we approach, and we are at now 30% of the S&P 500 is made up of pretty much technology stocks. That's getting very concentrated, and it will be a problem when we talk about lost decades potential as we go through videos in 2025. So make sure to subscribe if you're interested in that type of content. As we mentioned in the previous video, Santa rallies do tend to come, and when they come, they usually are pretty decent. If you actually bought the NASDAQ 3 days before Christmas, then sold it 8 days after, you did this over the last kind of 30 years, plus you would be 28 and 5. Now, that's not too bad since 1987. That's a pretty good read here. And it does mean that, yeah, generally you should be bullish over this period. We've shared many charts. If you go back through our previous videos, we've talked about it a lot. Now, another reason we go through and be generally bullish into January is because when we talk about inauguration, which obviously happens January, I believe, 20th, then usually the stats are very good leading into those. Now, all Republican terms, you're only looking at about 55%. If you look at all presidential terms, the stats actually improve across the board. And in general, we've obviously seen a lot of optimism leading into probably tax cut discussion and, of course, a lot of different changes, which we all know about by now. Time will tell how the market really digests them. Remember that chart we just shared really shows us the second half of 2025 might be where the problems are. Now, let's talk Russell 2000 for a moment. It's been a terrible sector. We do have, of course, many experts supposedly saying that the Russell is expected to outperform. But if you looked at the last 7.5 years, yeah, the Russell has actually underperformed from 2016 all the way to now. It has been a very bad return. Annualized return is 7.5. Yeah, it's actually running at a huge relative performance decrease, negative 5.7 per year. And large caps have performed at 15.1. Now, you'd always say that eventually this will turn. And of course, the question is it going to turn now? Are we leading into a very good Russell in 2025? I'd love to see your opinions. We'll do a poll soon, and we'll see what you guys think. Are we going to see a turn and an improvement in the Russell 2000 in 2025? It's probably going to take a rate cut, and as we know, rate cuts are potentially coming over the next 24 hours with Jerome Powell obviously bringing down the decision in, not long at all now. Investors rushing into US equities. Everyone is bullish, basically. Everyone is taking leverage. We will do a special on this soon. I've already noted that a few brokers, including IBKR and others, are starting to lower the amount of leverage that you can take on the platform. What does that tell us? Huge amounts of leverage are going through and they're concerned about their book. They're basically saying we're too exposed to this particular area. That hasn't happened for a while. The last time I can really think of that happening huge was actually just before the Euro Swiss dropped its floor. And I remember all brokers cut their leverage to a point where it was like you couldn't get leverage over 5 to 1. And then before that, you'd been able to get 300 to even 500 to even 1,000 to 1 on it. What happened a few days later? It absolutely got crushed. So it's a story we must be following up on. Record highs, 42% pretty much of US households are now buying stocks. We know that this means that people are really excited. We also know that this is the exact time that you should be considering, well, do I really want to be taking leverage over the next year, or do I want to be more nimble, fast, and really starting to question the valuations? Remember, we're trading at 24 times forward earnings, and that's getting up there with one of the highest reads we've ever seen ever. And it's probably not sustainable at some of those zones. Let's break down also the massive amount of market turnover. Obviously, if we go to China, we go to the areas over here, you can see that there are a lot of transactions going on right now. This is a good sign if you've been looking at China. Remember, activity equals buyers and sellers, which also equals potential turn points. Remember, it is a fight between the PBOC and the market. And right now, leading into the Chinese New Year, I would have it a guess that the PBOC will continuously bring out stimulus. There's a lot of problems there. They will need to use everything. Throw the kitchen sink at it, as they say. And I'm sure that they will eventually do it. But at the moment, it is a game of cat and mouse. We're seeing price action obviously hold the level of demand, which is important, which we'll look at soon. Bitcoin still on the rise. It's the best coin, of course. But the question now remains, are we about to see a huge move in Ethereum? Well, we've seen a massive dark pool trade. Obviously, generally speaking, if you're looking at Ethereum, you usually go in January to May in terms of strength. And dark pool is kind of showing a monster transaction. I don't know if it's a sell or buy yet, but it's happening here at the tippity top. Speaking of dark pools, 2 large transactions coming through IVV and then a massive transaction over the last 24 hours in a 3x bull fund for the S&P. Now, 2 big ones, the 6th largest recorded in quite some time, coming in right near the highs. You'd have to think that's a take profit at these levels. So again, we've got a pit, we've got a pullback in time on markets, we've got just into the potential of the Santa Claus rally, and obviously we're seeing a lot of transactions. It could also be accumulation, it's possible, but we are still stuck in the zone. So remember, 6,100 plus, that really is going to tell us breakout, positive gamma, all of those types of things. At the moment, we're looking for semiconductors to lead. We're looking for, of course, 6,100 plus on the S&P. Speaking of semis, MMUU, which is a 2 times leveraged fund, saw a big transaction the other day that led into pretty good moves across most of the semis. Of course, Broadcom really benefiting from that. But here's the one I wanted to discuss, a huge dark pool transaction coming through from Ethereum. And this is now the largest transaction. We had the largest transaction, which was here, which was the sweep. Now we've got another huge one. I wonder if we get above 4,100 on Ethereum, this is going to be presented as a buy. We don't know that yet. Of course, it's at the tippity top. You could always argue it's a sell here because, of course, we've rejected 4,100 twice now. We break 4,100, we should be leading into 4,600. But regardless, the largest transaction in Ethereum in terms of this particular ETF, and that's big. I mean, that's a massive transaction going through. Is it a buy or sell? Price action is going to tell us. We'll look at the charts in a moment. What about the last 24 hours? Well, I don't think it was like super bad. It was more defensive than normal. You saw kind of beaten down sectors. You also saw, of course, healthcare, staples, and utilities kind of holding up better. And you saw regional banks falling the worst. So, of course, that isn't exactly fantastic. But let's look at the charts here. More sideways action. Now, what happened is as the market went down, guess what people did? Puts. Yeah, there's a lot of puts. You'll see it in a moment. Puts everywhere. 6,000, of course, and 5,950 are both incredible kind of support zones. 6K in particular is a great support zone. Here are the updated options levels. Again, pullback in time, not concerned at this stage, still looking bullish into next year. And one of the reasons is every single time this market goes down by even an inch, look at this. Look at these puts. Everyone's stacking puts. Guess where the level is? 6K. So really at this stage, even if it goes down to 6,000, you're looking for strong rejections from that point. We break through 6,100. That's going to be, of course, a very good bullish catalyst. What about Tesla? 500 still the target. I would go before 500. You never want to actually look at the main key level. But we did see that massive transaction come through at around 450. The market is still pushed up 480 at this point. And yeah, I think just before 500 is going to be very interesting to look at the level 2 data when it comes to Tesla. A lot of trades, a lot of positive gamma. Would not short it. Obviously, if you were going to go against it, you'd probably want to do it when it gets closer into the high 490s. Good work. Anyone that's been holding Tesla, though, what a bonanza it's been during the month of November and December. Let's take a look at Nvidia now. Nvidia seems to be kind of a lot of calls at 135. It went down to 125. And we know here, look at where the puts are next week. 125, as we mentioned, and 130. So we've got two really big put wall kind of levels. And these will need to be watched and observed. My guess is that they're going to hold. And it's because so many people are bearish. So everyone's looking at that head and shoulders, which we'll check out in a moment. But as you'll notice, the RSI is oversold as well, or about to get to a zone that we've seen a couple of times. And I'm not as bearish as everybody else seems to be on Nvidia. Remember, semis have been improving across the board. And it looks like Wall Street's playing the game to get maybe some liquidity from us on Nvidia. Remember, it is still the best semi out there. US 10-year still sitting at resistance, waiting for Jerome Powell. XLY, XLP, the American consumer, still strong, guys. That's a good sign. Home builders, definitely a concern. Hitting our alerts yesterday, right on support. We'll see how that plays. Home builders is not an instant sell on markets, but it is a warning shot across the bow. So we'll be watching that one. US dollar still at resistance, no change. Gold sitting at demand, pretty much sitting where I would expect buyers to try to support it. And silver finding a little bit of a bid here, looking for it still above 31.15. So if that happens, we're looking good. At this stage, I would say silver is neutral at current levels. So watch that one. US oil, as we mentioned, pullbacks to be met by bull demand. At this stage, oil is temporarily bullish. The edge on this is not as much as you would get usually on a lot of other pairs. It's very geopolitical right now, leading into, of course, Trump's inauguration. Tesla continues to absolutely ramp. We're looking at just below 500 being kind of a target, 495, 498, something like that. I would be very happy with this, but I'd probably be even considering taking some profit. I did the forward PE on it. It is almost 100 forward PE over the average now. So that's almost one standard deviation above. I think at about 205 forward, you should be really scared. And we're going to get there if we keep pushing higher over the next couple of days. At the moment, it is a squeeze. Remember what you're in. Don't leave into the storyline. Remember, if it's in the press, it's in the price. Everyone's getting hyped. And you have to be early on these ones. If you're not, sit on the sidelines, wait for the next opportunity. There's nothing wrong with that. Semiconductors have improved. We've liked this. They fell a little bit over the last 24 hours, but still improving. But let's take a look at Nvidia, because this is the one that dropped. The head and shoulders that every single person is talking about. Now, it did break below, but you'll notice it instantly found bid after moving down through the session. So what I always like to do here is, firstly, let's have a look at the RSI. So I don't use RSI that often because it's not the best indicator, but you'll notice here that we've hit a couple of times this oversold RSI into the 40s. And if you take a timing here when it hits these RSI oversold 40s, then you're generally speaking around the low. So this one here was here actually, 103. Remember, don't cheat, guys. So 103, not the low. Here's one, the way we hit it, and obviously it was the low, and we've just done it again. Now, most people are going to be targeting, I would say, this price down here of about 115, 116. We know 125 and 130 next week are fairly decent put walls that may support the price. We know there are a lot of shorts. There's no way that this isn't being shorted fairly heavily by retail traders trying to look at that pattern. It looks pretty good on the surface, but let's have a look at the 2-hour chart. And what you'll notice is that we sold heavily in the morning, which is where retail tends to be. We got super oversold signals, and then we started to ramp. Now, that's not enough in itself to actually say, oh, wow, this thing's going strong. But if it's able to now breach to the upside and start to move back to the upside, imagine how many people are actually going to be caught off guard. We could see a large move here. And I always say patience, react, and predict. This is, at the moment, we're chilling. We're looking for the reaction. We're looking for the sign of edge on each area. And Nvidia certainly has shown a little bit of a bid. And again, it's a long leg doji, so it means equilibrium. But I wouldn't get too caught up in the head and shoulders. It may work. Congrats if you're on it short. But I do think that a lot of people are watching this one. So for me, the types of trades I'd be looking at is the trap. Or, of course, if it comes down to the target, well, I'd rather be on the buy side. I personally would rather generally buy stocks than sell them, especially when you're talking about one of the best stocks in the world. Broadcom, meanwhile, 250 was too much for it. It sold off. We continue to watch this, but if you're in it, 250 is a pretty good target. Big moves there. And we start to see Hong Kong 50 find a little bit of bid, which is pretty sweet. So we'll update that once it gives us some edge. US 2K, looking for around 23.75. We get above that, we're looking good. At the moment, series of lower highs and lower lows. So no bid on the US 2000 yet. But if it does find bid, we'll talk about it here. NASDAQ continues to climb higher. This is certainly the wall of worry and no doubt a dull market. So again, wouldn't go against it. Probably wouldn't buy any new positions in the NASDAQ. Instead, what I would be doing is just chilling with the holds. And that's because, as we've mentioned, coming to the Santa rally, there are some good stats around it. Ethereum weakening against Bitcoin. Okay, that's all right. No worries there. Remember, we need 4,100 plus Ethereum to really get the party started. But we do also want to break this 0.04 barrier. So at the moment, Bitcoin's been better, and that's absolutely fine. It means the rest of the alt market is also simmering down. People are losing faith. They're going into Bitcoin. It's always the same old, same old. Ethereum did see the largest transaction. Obviously, you're going to get MACD and all sorts of divergences here. I'm not convinced because, of course, we know where the major support is, 3,600 on Ethereum. So 3,600 is the major support. We're not convinced it's a double top yet. We do know there's a large transaction. If we end up shooting above 4,100 with a large transaction, we have to think the power of the street is behind us. And next up, 46. So an exciting print, not conclusive exactly what's going on yet. A lot of people are going to say it's a sell. I'm sure a few of you are screaming it in the comments down below. But if we do get price action to the upside, remember, that's the power of the street coming along with you. Has Bitcoin done enough? It's a very dull market. We know they tend to blow in big candles. So in this case, I don't think it's necessarily hit the high, and the daily 20 is one of the better buy zones for now on that. As we all know, guys, this is really a week about the federal funds rate. It's coming out in less than 24 hours. Check it out. Make sure to follow along. 4.5, 25 basis points. The statement, which happens, or press conference that happens half an hour later, that can sometimes reverse markets. But yeah, in general, we're expecting 25 basis points. I'm going to go with that. The wording will be important. We'll do a summary of that after the close on Wednesday. So make sure to sub. We'll check that one out together. As always, guys, if you enjoyed today's video, then please remember to subscribe. Check out our X as well. We post a lot of accounts over there. I want to thank you so much for spending your time watching today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. You found some quality stuff. We usually do a lot of in-depth analysis here on the channel. But to summarize, markets still look relatively bullish. Breadth is a concern, but usually it's a very slow concern. We showed this the other day. So generally speaking, you're looking at breadth over a very long period. We have started to see some things that I'll share in the next video that you go, okay, what's going on here? But in general, I would say markets are still bullish. Data stats are still good for the short term as well. And we're looking for that Ethereum 4,100 break. That'll be a pretty big zone, I think, for these markets, especially with those huge trades. Nvidia, worth watching. Let's check it out. We'll follow it along together. Bye for now, guys.